Hi, this is Amy from Good Food Unearthed, and today I'm joined with Stephanie. And Stephanie is going to talk to us about Roots and Wings, which is a bunch of pods for learning for children. That's going to be a community school, and it's in Ontario. So this is a really great project that I want to delve into because there's a lot of parents who are looking for alternatives right now. So Stephanie, I wonder if you could introduce yourself and talk about what got you interested in alternative forms of education.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amy. Yes, my name is Stephanie, and I'm also an educator in both, I have been in both in the public system and the private system for the last few years. And I've taken myself out really to really dive into holistic education and share that with my community. But what really got me into it, I would have to say, is a mix of things, but mostly my family. And that's because my brother, at an early age, he was diagnosed with ADHD, and he struggled a lot in school, and it was really stressful and difficult because my parents didn't have the resources and the knowledge with how to deal with it. And so they started exploring alternative modalities themselves, and it led them down this amazing path of healing and holistic nutrition, holistic education, and well-being. And now they've dedicated their careers and their lives to helping others and training others in this area. And so when I became a teacher, I was still new with a lot of the things that they were studying, but when I started to notice within the classroom that there was a lot missing in the actual current system, I started to also look elsewhere. And that's when I joined my family on this beautiful adventure of just really finding what it means to create like a whole child and nurture a whole child. And so here we are.
There are actually quite a few people who have brought up the topic of holistic education. So what does it actually mean to provide a holistic education? What's the difference between the traditional schooling methods and some of like the alternatives that you've discovered?
So when we speak of holistic education, we talk about the integration of mind, body, and soul, or mind, body, and spirit. And, it's one thing to educate, the children, the new generation in terms of academics, which is definitely important that there's knowledge base behind what we talk about so that we can become critical thinkers. But there's also the importance of nurturing our mental well-being, our emotional well-being, and really looking at, emotional intelligence and how that plays out, and giving, children the tools to navigate in these different areas of their lives. And then also with, in terms of spirit, being really connected to, their intuition, and really trusting that gut feeling and knowing what that's like.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. So how did the concept of this community school that you're working with or working towards building now, how did that come up?
This came up because, well, definitely because of a need. I feel like even when we have a partner who we work with in South America who started a community school there. And when she began it, it's because she wanted to create this space for her children, and it wasn't available. And likewise, now, that I've been here and working with the holistic learning pods through this year, we find more and more parents needing an alternative to the school system, something that is going to support not only their learning, but also like we were talking about, their emotional and mental well-being. And I just believe this program really provides all of that, and it really creates a balanced school day. We want to give more than just the academics. We want to teach kids to, to learn to breathe, to learn to eat intuitively. What does that mean? We want to learn, what does cooperation mean? What does it mean to work in multi-level or multi-grade settings? So like learning from each other, not just learning from kids at our own age or in our own groups. And mindful movement. So we also incorporate a lot of yoga into our practice as well.
So these
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so these pods then they're actually different ages altogether.
Yes, they are. They're multi-grade. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So, and you started this last year, 2020. That's been a really hard year for kids, I think. Um, what's the impression that you've gotten since the pods have been going? Like, what's the effect on the kids?
So something that I know, and just kind of going back even to your last question, it's not only just providing a solution for like a well-rounded education, it was providing a solution for children who were required to wear masks in school. And so one of our beliefs is that this was an unhealthy way, an unhealthy environment for them. So we wanted to create a very safe and nurturing learning space where they were not exposed to that. And
Mhm.
also that they're in the safety of, people that they know. So there's also less bullying and less any kind of situation that normally would happen. And something that has been shared from families with me has been that while they're in school and they decided not to wear a mask when it was like a suggestion, it wasn't mandatory, that a lot of kids were being bullied because
Mhm.
of these choices, and a lot of that has been just really sad to hear. So I know parents are looking for options where this is not happening, and so we've created amazing communities in our pods, and they're kind of all through the GTA now, and a lot of the children are like really, really close knit now, and the families have come together and they're also really close in the pods, and so it's just created love and support rather than division, which is what they were
Mhm.
before.
So these pods, then, could you give us an idea of what a school day is like? Do they get together in person? Is it online? How long is it? Is it like a regular school day, or is it differently structured?
Yeah, so we have two options. We have part-time and full-time, and our part-time day is half a day. So it's like 3.5 hours, Monday to Friday. And some families have opted for kind of a rotation. They do 2 full days one week and then 3 full days the other, and kind of rotate this way. And this is the part-time option. And then we have the full day, which is Monday to Friday for 6.5 hours, like a 9 to 3:30, let's say. So normal school day. And the way that the structure of the day works is we start and we end all our classes in it's all in person. And yeah, so let me backtrack a little bit. One parent will volunteer or two to host the pod. So they create
Mhm.
a learning space within their home. And typically the class to just have space like table for the work, communal table. We kind of steer away from individualized desks. We want to work together in one space, and also the space for circle time. And so we start and end our day with circle. And so during our circle time, we start them with, we say pranayama, so it's just breath work. And we have different activities that kind of really engage kids from all ages. And then we go on to teaching them things like yamas and niyamas. And this comes from the yogic philosophy. And really what it is about connecting to self and cleansing self. So like thinking positive thoughts, like speaking positively, positive actions. And like this, when we speak to ourselves this way and we take care of ourselves this way, then we can share that with others, which leads us into niyamas. And niyamas is how do we connect with others and how do we create positivity with our community. And so we practice things like with the little ones, like how do we give a compliment or how do we show gratitude? And so little things like practices we do every day and discussions we do every morning. We usually also have it based on how this conversations go naturally. We set intentions for the day, and and then that's followed up by probably some mindful movement or a nature walk. And so a
Mhm.
lot of our groups go to they're usually located to a nearby park, and or if you're lucky enough, the Humber River or High Park or anything like that. And they go on a little half hour walk, 45-minute walk, where they engage in also mindfulness activities. The whole point is to engage with your surroundings and be present. So a lot of the teacher's role when she brings them out is to help engage the senses,
Yeah.
because when we're using our senses, we're in the moment. And the more we're in the present, also the more creative we are. And so it's
Mhm.
about creating that wonder and the kids. And so when we come back, there's normally a break, like a snack, a recharge break, we call it, do whatever you need to do to kind of get yourself kind of gathered, your energy gathered again and grounded so that we can do our main learning activity for the day. And this is where our holistic curriculum comes into play. So we have a very well-rounded amazing curriculum that I'm in love with, and it really brings and pulls in the best from, curriculums that you're familiar with, like Forest curriculum, Waldorf, Montessori, Reggio Emilia. And so it just kind of takes the best of all of it and brings it into one. And so they spend about an hour to 2 hours a day, depending if they're in the part-time or full-time, doing this activity. And most of the time, because they're multi-level, a lot of them get to explore activities at different levels, which works really great, because sometimes it really challenges the younger ones to do something outside of their comfort zone, but likewise it lets the older ones lead the younger ones and make it easier for them to also do the same activities. You see so much collaboration and empathy and compassion and like leadership, a lot of different character building that I see with the multi-level groups. And so after that, we typically go into maybe a literacy activity, or like an elective. It could be music or artistic expression, and then we slowly wind down into a closing circle, which usually involves some yoga. So we have like fun games that we do to incorporate them into that, and then a final like guided meditation into shavasana, and then a reflection on the day.
Yeah, gotcha. That sounds really amazing, because one of the things I noticed growing up with education, and it became really apparent once we were in high school, was this focus on like everything up here, as if you're all mental. And I had this picture that, people were really disembodied. They were stuck up here, and they didn't know like how to feed themselves. They didn't know how to tune into their environment so they could adapt when things changed. And I think that's kind of, a bit of the issue with so many people being adversely affected right now with all of the lockdowns and everything, because we've been so disconnected. So some of the things you're doing for these children is actually really beneficial for their overall well-being, their mental health, their physical health, and they're actually the ones doing it for themselves, because they're learning how to tune into their own intuition, like you were saying. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that we are better equipping these children for the future when we give them these tools at a young age.
Mm.
And it just becomes natural for them to incorporate this. I think this also goes back to, again, observing, in my own family and myself. I went through the system, and I felt like when I left high school, I was left with this confusion of like, why did we learn all this? Like, what is my purpose? Like I was always waiting externally for someone to provide the answers for me. We kind of get dependent on systems outside of us to decide what's good for us. And I think what's so beautiful with this program is you're constantly having them connect inwards and trusting inwards what's right for them. So it's all about that intuition. And I think that if we that's the most important tool, in my opinion, is to give them that self-trust, so that they can trust themselves, to make the right choices for themselves in the future.
So right now, what are the ages that you've got in some of your pods?
So they range. We have as early as preschool, like age 3-4, up until grade 7.
Wow.
Upper elementary, yeah.
And what about the parents? What do the parents think of their kids? What have they experienced from having their kids in these pods?
So a lot of them, I think they're completely surprised by how much now they have to say about their school day. Whereas I think before they would ask them how was school, and it was always like, yeah, it was good, or it was fine. But a lot of comments I get now is that when they ask them how their school days, they're like, oh, well, this is what I learned. This is how I digest my food. And they'll kind of retell everything they just learned about the digestion process, and they're learning this as early as grade 1. The curriculum is like kind of amazing like that. And it really, applies all the knowledge they're learning is applicable to something so real to their everyday lives, so they can fully apply it right away. And that's what allows them to remember it in so much detail.
Yeah.
And so they really do just go, if they're home already, they just go upstairs and, they tell their parents, hey, this is everything I learned, and they're really excited about it. So I've been hearing a lot of kind of just feedback on they can't believe how much they're retaining. And And also, I think I've heard a lot about the emotional regulation and how that's improved, because we do have an emotional regulation program that's part of it. And we create an emotional regulation zone, I would say, within the learning space, kind of like a Zen zone, a relaxation zone, where we have tools and we have ways to help children develop these skills. So whenever they're feeling deregulated, the whole point is that we eventually we're teaching them to independently recognize that, and then to use the tools that we've given them to self-regulate.
Mm.
And so I've noticed in a lot of the feedback I've gotten from parents is that they are using it, and that they're becoming more independent at using that, recognizing, hey, I'm feeling sad right now, so I'm going to take myself away from this group and I'm going to do something that makes me feel better, makes me ready to come back. And so, I mean, that's super powerful. If they're already learning that at 4 or 5 years old, I mean, that's, yeah, for me, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because then you're not asking somebody to help you so much. Like, I mean, you also wouldn't be afraid to ask if you needed help, but at the same time, like, hey, I can step away and I can just go do this, and I'll start to feel better. And then I can come back and I'm not mad at anybody. We can all still be friends. It's all good. Yeah.
Exactly. And the whole thing is to create a seamless transition from like a school day to their home life, because we don't want them to think you only do this within the school parameter. It's like you literally are given these tools to use all the time. So if they're feeling deregulated at home with their siblings on the weekend or after school, they know, okay, I know what to do. You know, I know this is what I have to do to take care of myself. Yeah. So creating that transition.
And about so what do you say for like parents who are concerned about, you know, the things that they're told their children should learn? Like I know that's included in the curriculum, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about um those kind of, what do you call them? The markers, for you hit this mark, and it proves somehow that you're educated. So how do you approach that in your school?
I know, and there's this, that's where my traditional side, is there and speaking. So I will kind of speak from that side first, like a more traditional approach to learning and what we know as like hitting the landmarks, like you're saying. And I will say that the curriculum we have now has a list of, let's say, skills. And so there's a curriculum for each grade, and there's a list of skills that if you do the curriculum all year, you will hit all of those skills, and they do translate to things that you're using in the traditional public school system. They would line up. So in case someone is they're coming in with that mentality, or that kind of concern, like I always like to put them at ease that that is there, not to worry. But we're really trying to change the perspective from reaching certain skills at a certain age, and that we need to provide kids with the space to learn without pressure or stress, or this idea that they need to be here at a certain point. That every kid is so unique in the way that they learn and the way they advance. They're going to have years where they need to take their time, and they're going to have years where they completely go really, really fast. There isn't this one size fits all model. And so that's why I love this multi-age, multi-level grouping. It's because we can be doing, there's a grade 1 and grade 4, but we can do a grade 3 skill today. We can do a grade 1 skill tomorrow, and grade 4. And then we have this environment where they don't feel like they can't do something. We want to completely build a relationship and love for learning. That is our utmost, number one priority, is to build a positive relationship. Because if we force them or stress them or do anything like that, they're going to build that negative association with it. And especially at a young age, if we're doing that when they're so early on, these are things that become part of their subconscious and who they are as adults. So we have to be really careful, the younger they are, that we're just making it really fun and positive experience for them.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it will naturally come out of them. They will love it, and they will fly.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
that's totally right. Because I when I was growing up and going to school, I often found it interesting that they had a certain idea about what smart was. And I always saw everybody I went to school with as they're all smart, but they're all different, right? We all see things differently, and then we actually complement each other, which is the way that it should work. But But I think it's interesting as well to encourage that learning, because as long as you do that, that desire to learn, then kids aren't afraid to ask questions. And we've got all of these adults right now who are so concerned about being right and so afraid
Mhm.
of being wrong. And
Mhm.
then, not willing to say, well, maybe I don't know, and maybe I am wrong, and maybe I'm right, but that could all change. Like, and that's actually what's really fun and exciting about life, is that it is going to change, and there's going to be people who are better adapted at different situations, but then we help each other, which is neat. It's very dynamic.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
think, the traditional system was very everybody for themselves, and there was
Mhm.
so much competition involved. I
Mhm.
feel like the pressure was always like, who's going to get the best marks, is going to be the most successful, is going to get ahead. It's always like we were prepared for this huge race in life, when really we weren't really building community, and
Mhm.
collaboration is at the core of that. And so, like you said, it's about identifying your strengths and sharing your strengths with everyone. And the more unique we are with our strengths, the better and more kind of diverse like that group will be with its qualities, right? And what it can offer. So
Mhm.
yeah.
So how many educators do you have working with you, and how many pods have you got going right now?
So we have 6 pods going right now, and we have, so same thing, 6 educators, no, 5 educators, because we have one that rotates.
Mhm.
um, yeah, and so we have them in Toronto, we have Oakville, and then we have one or two starting in Waterloo.
Mhm.
And just also receiving now like an influx of information, like, inquiries, because they really want to, really know what's happening with September. I think a lot of people have committed, in some way or another for this year, or looking to transition to pods, but
Mhm.
really looking for a solution for September.
So, and the idea, I think, and you could let me know if I'm wrong on this, is that the pods are going to become a community school. So does that mean, will they come together, or will it just be like a pod structure that's sort of has an overarching, connected curriculum?
Well, actually, what we're going to do is that we're going to build a space, like an actual school, so that we can have, many students and parents and educators come under one roof. And so we're looking to do that in the Toronto West area for September. But because we can't, not that we can't, because not all families that are in the pods outside of the GT, like the ones that are further away, can make that location. We're still going to offer education in the form of pods. So what I'm going to be offering is I can come and set up learning spaces similar to our school, but in your home. So it's the same
Mm.
idea. Like, if you can't reach the school, then I'm still able to come to you and help you set up your own learning space, or your own micro school, we can call them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you've got 5 educators. Are there other educators who want to become involved right now?
Yes, I've had so many amazing educators reach out and just really want to support, and we've just been having conversations and brainstorming ways to get involved and to make this grow. And yeah, that's like where my next kind of thought process is going, with how to really empower all educators and parents, and how to make this grow. Yeah, and involve
Awesome.
everyone.
Cool. So for people that want to get involved, is there a way that they can contact you?
Yes, right now the best way to contact me is through Roots and Wings
Mhm.
Toronto email. So it's rootsandwingstoronto@gmail.com. And we are in the works of finding ways and structures, and yeah, to make this like a bigger thing, because we realize that there are many people in like the GTA and beyond, really, that really want to get involved, and I want to make that possible. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Mhm.
Perfect. So yeah, I mean, I wonder if there's anything else you want to talk about with this. If you have any more information you can give for parents, I guess, can people join now, or will they have to wait till next September, the start of the next school year, to get involved?
No, right now we're still taking pod enrollment. I would say though that we have an education coordinator, Angela Senna, and she right now is helping form the pod. So she's connecting families in similar geographic like areas to see like how to form the pods and seeing who would home host. And then she goes in and starts the 2-week trial session. So we are offering a trial session for the next couple of months to really invite parents and children to experience the program for 2 weeks and see if they'd like to come in until June. And there is something I did want to share more on kind of the hiring of the teacher process, because that's been really important for parents, and they've really wanted to know kind of how we go about that, because it's a big shift to bring a teacher and strangers into your home, you know, and to trust the process. So we do, when we're hiring teachers, we are really looking for candidates who are aligned with our philosophy and our vision, and also see themselves kind of growing within our community. And this is definitely for teachers who already have a self-practice in mindfulness. Because I don't believe that, well, I believe it's very difficult to teach it if we don't already have a practice for ourselves, because, you know, students model what their teachers do. And so if we come in and we show, because we are human too, and if we get, you know, angry, upset, stressed, and we can show how we can use those tools, then they're like, wow, that really works. They're doing it too. I trust this person. And so we do provide, so our teachers do come in with a background in that they are, they have their bachelor of education, they have this background. But in addition to that, my family, we have a yoga and training facility, and so we train teachers how to teach yoga to children. So this is also a license that they come with.
All right.
Yeah, we do the appropriate background checks and everything, and make sure that it's a legit thing.
And so the pods, with the, say there's one pod and you've got the students and the parents, is that going to rotate between each parent's house for the hosting, or will it usually just stay in one spot?
We've had a mix of everything. So I've had one pod that it's always been in the same place, like since September. I've also had pods that just switch between the parents, between two of them. It really depends. It's up to them. It's really up to them. Open to all structures.
So I wonder, let's go back now. So this is the project, and the goal is, you know, you guys are going to grow and hopefully have a location plus some pods where parents can't make that location. But let's go back to you, at your interest in alternative forms of education, and your friend who's in, you said South America, is that right? So how did she set up her pods there, and how is that working out? Is that still going on?
It is. So she's Roots and Wings. Ayampe is the town. So it's a very small coastal town on the Pacific in Ecuador. And she never started in the form of pods in people's homes. She actually just opened the school because, you know, there was a need for it. And what's really amazing is that, so before she started this, her main thing was, what curriculum am I going to use? I know I want my kids to have an alternative education. I want them to be open-minded. I want them to be involved in their community. I want them to care about the environment. Like, there were a lot of things that she was looking for. And so she really explored many different ones. And it took her 5 years to fall into this one that we use now. And so she's been using it. She's in her 3rd school year using this curriculum, but also incorporating a lot of what she's personally studied. So she's originally from Canada, but she's also has a huge background in studying like the yoga philosophy. She's also, you know, a teacher trainer for Veda, and kind of structured her day to create this really, you know, holistic, I would say, and balanced program. And the way that she involves parents, and this is something that I'm definitely want to focus on too with our school is that she has parents come in and teach the electives. So every parent has something really special and really unique, and we all have our gifts and we all want to share them. And so why not bring it in and we share them with our learning community? So we have, teachers come in and do aerial yoga. She has another teacher who comes in and does the surf classes because their school's right on the beach. It's really beautiful. And another teacher that comes in and teaches them how to knit and doing sewing. And what she observed and what she's told me is that, her children, when they learn something from the electives, like they're not just waiting for the elective moment to do it. They go home or they wake up on the weekend and they're excited and they're ready going into all of the things that they've learned. And they don't see it as something they just do within the walls of their school. They're like, these are things I can do all the time. I love it so much. And so that's been her biggest, I think, takeaway, is just seeing how learning just goes beyond it, and just seeing how kids take the learning outside of the classroom and are applying it all the time.
Yeah, that's actually the other thing when you mentioned earlier with the application of what they're learning. I think that's something that it's really missing, at least from what I've seen in teaching, that, I found that kids find it most interesting when they could use it right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And when the people that they're involved with, it's something that the people they're involved with care about. So like, if it's their mom and their mom is knitting, then they become really interested in that, just because, it's their mom and they see their mom knitting. And so they watch them, they observe them, and they want to try it out.
Yeah.
And yeah, and with the structure you've got with the multiple ages, that kind of is the way with younger kids and the older kids. They see something the older kids are doing and they want to give it a try and experiment and see, oh, hey, they're doing that. I want to see what that's all about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. No, yeah, the sharing is definitely, a big part of it.
Mhm.
And another thing that she does every Friday is she takes them to the turtle sanctuary. And so they are part of the I'm not sure the word right now specifically that they use, but they go every Friday and they help all the turtles that are being brought in, that are being cleaned of all of the kind of oil residues and anything that they're collecting from the oceans. They go in and they participate in actually cleaning the shells of the turtles and washing them off, and just learning about conservation at such a young age is so important. They're really building those relationships with animals, living things, and realizing our responsibility is to take care of not responsibility. And so that's something they do every single week. Their yeah.
Just had a little bit of a glitch there, but I think we got most of that. So okay, you're back now.
Okay, good. Sorry.
We must have, it's okay. I think we just have a bit of a poor connection there. But yeah, there's actually this recognition, I think, that maybe the role of humanity is sort of to be like, what's the term? It's almost like a caretaker, right? Here. Okay.
Sorry, I
That's
have no idea.
okay. I think it must be on my end. But yeah, so what I was saying was I've seen this in other circles, that there's this recognition that maybe the role of humanity is as sort of like a caretaker, that we're somehow really in tune and adapted to be able to keep the earth and everything in it in a nice space, in a way, and
Yeah.
and how, I can't say for definite how that looks, because I think for each person in their own situation, they'll get the idea for how that will be. But yeah, it's really, really fascinating.
It is. And I think a huge thing, even for, my family and I, like my family is from Ecuador. And I
Mhm.
think I never truly appreciated Ecuador like I have in the last few years as an adult, because, I I would go just to see family, like not just to see family, but it was simply just like a very superficial kind of connection to it
Mhm.
before. Whereas now I feel like we are actively working with Indigenous communities. We actively participate in so many beautiful ceremonies. And I now can appreciate and see the value in it. And it's like this thing inside me that just really wants to share that with everyone, just how connected we are to, yeah, it's Indigenous communities and also to Mother Earth. And I think the more we kind of I think children are naturally connected, and I think we
Mhm.
have a lot also to learn from them. But I think that if we can share in that connection every day and through education, and really like watch that kind of grow through the families, like from the bottom, from the kids all the way as it spreads into the families, you can create really like a really aware and connected community too.
Mhm. Now, I wonder, how do you address is you've got the emotional regulation. So, if somebody's upset, they know how to kind of recenter themselves. And we have such an atmosphere right now there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of judgment, there's a lot of like, division as well. Um, I'm wondering how there's what do you have employed in the school that kind of, when people are having conversations with each other and there's a disagreement, or somebody says something and another person's offended, like how do they navigate that?
That's a really good question. And I think there's different parts to it. There's like an immediate, how do I deal with this right now versus
Mhm.
how do we kind of work on this long term so these things kind of don't happen again. And I think what's really important and what I've learned through the pods is really holding space for students. And what I've noticed is when they come into these disagreements or arguments or fights, because they happen often. The kids act in the now. So if they're feeling
Mhm.
something, they say it in that moment. And I think that's also really important that they have that space to express themselves. Um, and so I want to honor whatever level they are of awareness and how they express themselves or how they're reacting. I like to create that space of that's okay, like let it out. I'm here to listen, I'm here to support you in however it is that you're dealing with this emotion. So that is one aspect. And the second aspect is, you know, how can we kind of regulate that emotion? Did we react appropriately? Did we react to maybe hurt somebody with that reaction? Regardless, that reaction is natural and it's okay and it's fair. And I want them to feel like it was okay to be there in that moment. But that there are appropriate ways to deal with it after. And then we do have that system in place with our emotional regulation program where we do kind of show them different tools. And it's definitely a practice. And I think that that's also something we really share with them, that nothing is expected right away. Everything is a practice. And as long as they're practicing, they can honor where they are in that journey.
Yeah, and the other thing that's kind of we see having a lot of pressure right now is the individual freedom, right? Individual freedom and individual rights to choose. Do you have something in there that kind of fosters that, mutual respect for each person's individual freedoms and rights? Where, say if somebody wanted to um, say, well, let's take a simple example. Somebody wanted to wear a mask and somebody didn't want to wear a mask. Both of them were like, well, that's fine. You can do that and you can do that. And I'm just not going to force you to do my way, or, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Mm.
I know that's a big one right now, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think part of it also goes to how do you want to use how do you want to use your energy right now? And I think a lot of people are being triggered by whether, you know, someone wears a mask or doesn't wear a mask for that matter. And I think it's important to say that we're all in different stages of awareness, different levels of awareness, and we need to respect where people are I think at all times. And I think as long as you worry about yourself and your own self-awareness and what's good for you and feel good about it, that's where that intuition comes from. Then we need to also always remember that when we think, speak, and act, that it comes from a very kind and pure place at all times. And that is where the yoga philosophy plays such a big part in our program, because when we talk about our yamas and our niyamas and the way that we have to behave in our community, we always go back to clear thoughts, clear words, clear actions, and that they should be pure. So I think when you're looking at any situation, whether it's masks or no masks or anything like that, if we go back and act from that place, you realize that we can definitely go at everything from a positive way.
Yeah, that's amazing. And with the curriculums that you decided to kind of take pieces from, the Waldorf and Montessori, and do you use any like Steiner as well?
Yeah, I believe Steiner is the same as Waldorf. I believe there's like
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Big overlap, but for sure, yes, it's all incorporated. I would say there's the biggest influence is Waldorf and Forest in the curriculum. Those two would be the biggest. I think the Montessori, the influence from there is more that it's child led, but we don't structure it according to like development or ages as much as Montessori does, just because we allow kind of for a little bit more flexibility and movement with that. But I would definitely say if we had to, it's definitely a big merging together of the Waldorf, which is the Steiner, and the Forest curriculum.
So for people who are unfamiliar with those, because I'm sure there are some, could you give a kind of a brief description of what those two entail?
Sure. I think what we loved so much about Waldorf was its focus on the creative arts at an early age, because, you know, our brains are really developing the creative side from 0 to 6, 0 to 7. You're kind of maximizing the creative output for your brain that's going to last you for the rest of your life. And so they really have used this to kind of just really dive into all the arts, whether it's like, you know, play, theater, dance, music, and just really being connected to nature and just seeing like how they naturally kind of bring out their creativity in these different environments. And I really love that. And so that's kind of what we were trying to take with that, is to really make it hands-on, to make it fun, and to take the pressure and stress away from like zoning in on the academic achievement at an early age, just because it actually stunts their growth. If you push anything logical on them before 6 years old, you're stunting the creativity. So they think they're getting ahead in one way, but you've stunted their creative potential, which is like the source of all of our ideas and abilities later on as adults, when we want to do our own thing.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because at one point I was doing some assistant English conversation teaching in Italy, and with the young kids in kindergarten and first grade, there were times where there were always kids who just wanted to draw, and they'd always have a piece of paper and they'd be drawing, and I thought that was really sweet. But then you had the main teacher who would always tell them to put it away, and not so the main teacher would always tell them to put it away. And I was thinking to myself, well, maybe what we should do is let them, if you ask them a question for learning, like let them draw the answer. Like let them use the way that they want to express it. And then we could actually, like, I'd be able to understand it. So I don't, that's a pretty good way to encourage that excitement to learn too, instead of making them think, oh, I have to do the hard stuff now and I can't do the fun things.
Oh, exactly. When it can all be fun and you can still learn and the objective can still be met. Yeah, I agree. And I think also when we're asking, like, we do journal writing in our pods as well. And, or we have gratitude journals. And I think sometimes there's just an open space in the gratitude journal. And I say, if you want to draw what you're grateful for today, if you want to scribble, if you want to sing me a song, like that, whatever way you want to express this activity is up to you. There's no one way. Second, we try to say there's only one way. That's when we get the resistance, because kids want to be free. They don't want to feel restricted and forced to do just one thing. Yeah. And just to add the forest curriculum, what we have kind of taken from that is really going outside as much as possible and using nature to kind of to to guide the lesson. So, when we go outside, and we learn under themes as well for this curriculum, it's thematic. So if we're teaching a theme on, what do I say, my world, and they have, part of their subjects is nature, so they go outside and they explore, what is my world kind of made up of, and they kind of look at what kind of flowers grow in my world, what kind of trees exist in my world, what and maybe there aren't any, or maybe there's, what kind of insects are in my world. And so they start going outside and they start analyzing. And a lot of times they always create like a little kind of like a sensory jar of what's in their backyard or what's in the nearby park. And they can do this at different seasons, but it's just really a connection of just going outside and learning from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Taking them away from just this idea they have to be in a classroom or you have to be at a desk. It's like all learning is from our world, right? That's where we learn everything. So it's just getting them out there and as much as possible for learning.
Yeah, actually, it's funny that you say that, because I've been trying to change the perception around science again, because it's been so limited at this point. And I was listening to an interview on an author who wrote a bit about Nikola Tesla. And Nikola Tesla, when he was learning, he learned from nature. And apparently he read the scientific journals of Goethe. And Goethe apparently was not just a poet, but he was also a scientist for much of his life. And he wrote about what he learned from nature. And what's really cool is that, all the machinery that we've come up with, it's all based on the things we've observed in nature, mechanics, how they work. And then we try to create something ourselves that might, mirror that functioning. So it's really neat, because there's, you don't have to be dependent on textbooks. You just go outside and pay attention and see what comes up.
And how beautiful to have a system that encourages that, right? Because we just don't have that in place. And I don't believe it's that teachers don't want to offer this in the traditional system. They just don't have the freedom to offer this. And I know what you're speaking of, because I'm a science teacher. I'm a high school biology teacher. So that's my background. And what I loved is I taught them actually as a bonus unit about biomimicry. And that's what you're talking about, is like looking at biology, observing from nature and seeing what we can design based on what is already naturally out there. So yeah, it's amazing what you can find when you just give yourself the space and time to sit and observe. And I think in a traditional system that's not possible either, when we have classes with blocks and times and it's additional stress to get this and this done. It really comes from not having any stress and just having the freedom to sit on the park bench and look at something for an hour or two, so
Yeah, I remember some great stories about people who never really went to full schooling. And one of them was a man who all he did was he learned to read, but then he didn't go to school. But the thing was, because he learned to read, that he basically educated himself the rest of his life. He would find something he was interested in and he'd read about it, and it would be things that he would immediately apply. And that's why he was interested in them. So he actually was very well educated, just not in any system.
Yeah. And I think that's also becoming a lot more possible with, the internet and technology. I've seen education change in that way, where teachers once used to be more of the source of knowledge, where that we would share that, whereas now it's more of, how do I facilitate this lesson by showing them how to use, different sources, evaluating different sources, and just being a little more critical about the information they're getting from so many different sources right on the internet. So I feel like that's definitely been the switch, the teaching, well, in the older grades specifically.
Yeah. And that actually, you reminded me of something that is a big concern for parents right now. So I wonder how your pods deal with this, and that's the screen time. So I know you've mentioned going outside a lot, but when you're inside with the teaching, is it all on screens, or how do you do that?
No, there's no screens. There's no screen time. I mean, the only time would be if we do a read aloud story, and we use like an iPad or laptop. And there are some activities that require us to do some research, but the site's already given and the source is given on what we have to read for. We did a lesson on animal testing, and this was I think a grade 3 activity that we did, and they had to read kind of the pros and cons first of animal
Mhm.
testing so that they can evaluate themselves whether they agree or disagree. It was more of a debate. And at grade 3, they were constructing arguments but picking the pros and cons from this list. Yeah, so that's kind of an example of how we use the what's it called, technology. But
Mhm.
I will say I definitely feel very responsible as an educator now that we're going to move into a community school space. I feel very responsible to teach children how to use technology responsibly. I
Mhm.
don't think we're ever going to move away from it, and I think it's not about getting rid of it. I think it's how do we teach them to use it responsibly? What are different ways to do that? Because if we want that seamless transition into the home, I want to trust that if I'm teaching them how to use it responsibly, then now they're also going home and transferring that skill at home. If I say you can't use it, they're going to go home and be like, okay, now I can use it. And then we're not really fixing anything.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's part of the environment right now. So
yeah.
it's just another thing to learn, is this going to control me, or how can I use it to help myself, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the same goes with social media. How
Mm.
do I create a very positive social media feed rather than saying that social media is bad? We can actually filter and we can create these positive, kind of story, let's say, situation,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. And you were mentioning that with the pods, it's actually been really great in terms of community building. And I think I want to touch on that as the last part, because we've been so isolated, and there's been not just the isolation, but all of this division. So I wonder if you could just go into a little bit of, what's happened in these pods, and how they've come together, and what some of the stories are.
Yeah, I'd love to. So part of it, I have one pod, and it was one of the first ones that we started in September, and they have 5 families that came together with 6 kids. And at first, it was more of, yeah, we know each other and our kids knew each other from last year. Let's just try this pod. But now they've become so close, all the parents, and become great friends because they see each other every day in like such an intimate
Mhm.
setting. And kind of to see that, and it also to see it translate to the relationships being built with the children, they all kind of just feel like they're a family. And I really love that because they're all different ages and like they come from different backgrounds. And I just think it's so beautiful to be part of kind of like this union. And I've seen that across, all of the pods. But what we're really trying to do right now was kind of bring communities together through our newsletter. And so
Mhm.
we have a newsletter that comes out, and we have both our community here through our pods in Ontario, but also the school in Ecuador. And so on the newsletter, we talk about, okay, what did the kindergartens learn this last month or 2 months? And we show all the skills, and we show all the pictures of how it looked like to cover the exact unit in Toronto versus Ecuador.
Mhm.
And so they can see, wow, like there's like people just like us, there's kids like just like us, but they're on the other side of the world, and this is what it looks like when they did this activity, learning about the human body, or, whatever it was. So that's been a really nice way to bring it together. And I also have a big responsibility to share this education that's not available to everybody. And especially in Ecuador, it's not accessible to all. And so, part of what we make, or part of what people pay into the tuition, a percentage of it goes to sponsoring local children so they can go to the school in Ecuador. And so we try to build community across both countries, but also, yeah, within our local area.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of like when we had pen pals growing up, and you had pen pals of different ages and in different locations, and it was really, before the internet, kind of your doorway into another part of the world that wasn't your immediate experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really has them thinking outside of their surrounding bubble. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much, Stephanie, for coming on. And is there any last words you want to say for parents or educators who are interested in what you're doing?
Yes, for sure, to reach out to me.
Okay.
So yes, I do invite everybody who's interested in participating to please reach out, especially if you want to help kind of expand the program to your area. We're definitely looking at ways to do it. So the more we network, I think, and we know where you're located, the easier it will be to actually put it in place when the time comes. And we are taking ongoing registration for the pods, and we will do our best to coordinate you with families nearby.
Mhm. Yeah, and hopefully you'll be able to do this in other provinces at some point, because I'm all the way in Newfoundland and I think it'd be a great thing to have over here.
Oh, I agree. I have already had some inquiry and interest from Ottawa, so not a
Yeah.
different province yet, but we're branching out.
Yeah,
Which is
yeah, no,
great.
it's wonderful, and I think it's a wonderful thing for the kids right now.
Mhm.
Definitely sounds like a welcoming environment, getting away from the stress and all the other things going on that are pretty problematic right now.
I think so.
Yeah,
I do.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it
yeah.
just kind of brings people together and creates some like positivity in their home where maybe we're not finding that outside so much. We can definitely learn to nurture it and kind of make it grow. Yeah,
Mhm.
in our
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Stephanie. And
Thank
it's
you.
Roots and Wings. Roots and Wings Toronto at gmail.com is where you can contact her for parents and educators. And hopefully we'll have you on again to talk about your updates in September or thereabouts. And
Yeah, that would
yeah.
be great. Oh, and we have started a Instagram account too. So it's Roots and
Mm,
Wings CS for community school. So Roots and
all
Wings,
right.
yes, and we'll be updating it by the end of the week. So please give us a follow because that will be we'll be very active through there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much.